an exciting bit, isn't it? That made your heart stop, didn't it? Right.
Lovely, thank you so much.
Now what?
So if you just come up to me, Nick, and we're going to clip you into the world's most exposed armchair here. As he did before, gently paying out the slack so it's never tight to me, so then I can move. I've got a nice little exposed traverse along here.
One last rope length to the top, and the answer to my Robertson conundrum.
How's that doing?
Well, it looked very dodgy to me, I must say.
Yes.
Off belay, taken!
Taking in.
It's a slightly tricky bit. Oh. Nearly there.
The final steps. Hands in pockets on the last bit, please, Nick.
Oh, that was fantastic. Martin, thank you so much.
Been a pleasure.
That is
great.
An ambition fulfilled. It's a long time coming. Seen God knows how many photographs of it, stood at the bottom of it, often wondered about it. Never quite had the nerve to come and do it.
I finally got to the top, and what an amazing place this is. But now for the moment of truth. Would it have been possible for Reverend Robertson not to realise which was the highest summit on this mountain?
We're on the top of the Inn Pin, and Sgurr Jereg is down there. This is obviously the highest part of the mountain. To say you've climbed this mountain, you have to be up here, but that's not what Robertson chose to do. He bagged Sgurr Jereg down there, a much easier task.
It's fairly certain the Reverend Robertson had not climbed the Inn Pin when he claimed to have finished the Munros. Here's what he wrote. I only wish I could tell the club of some faraway unknown peak bristling with difficulties on all sides, but the fact is, there are none.
So lean right out, Nick. That's it.
Well, if this isn't a peak bristling with difficulties on all sides, I just don't know what is.
It's hard to be sure what tale this mute blade of rock tells us. Perhaps Robertson came here planning to do the Inn Pin, but the weather was just too treacherous. What I cannot believe is that Robertson was entirely innocent in all this. He must have known that he'd missed the main mountain summit here. But he was able to tick off Sgurr Jereg, the mountain that was printed on Munro's list.
Reverend Robertson went down in history as the first person to complete all the Munros. On the 28th of September 1901, he climbed his final peak in Glencoe. What we know, though, is that although he ticked off everything on Munro's list, he hadn't climbed all the main mountain summits. The list had become more important than the mountains.
Munro had devoted years to the task of cataloguing Scotland's mountains. He must have felt, in some sense, that the mountains on the list were his. But with Robertson laying claim to being first to complete the list, he'd been beaten to the finish. Munro was more a man of figures than letters. Whatever he felt about Robertson being first to reach the end of his list, he kept it to himself. One. Then there were 2, then 10, 100, 1,000. As the numbers finishing the Munros grew, the question of who was first faded. but the triumph of completing them hasn't. Today, the hills are still just as high, and there are still just as many. 283 Munros, 6 years, 1,000 miles, and 500,000 feet of ascent, and at last, the final slopes of Douglas's final Munro are done.
Congratulations, Douglas. Well done, thank you. Congratulations, you did it. Good, well done, thank you. Wonderful. Well done. Wonderful. Well done. Yeah.
So that's it. Hang up the boots. You want a pair of boots? What size do you take?
No, you're not hang out your boots, Douglas. You can't do that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Come on, get the rest of that champagne out.
Douglas, that through mountaineering you have been given friendships, joys and lasting memories. Far more precious than accumulations of gold is no theory invented in days of idle incredulity, but the knowledge gained from the battle over adversity. Well done.
Thank you.
I feel very, very honoured to have been up here to see you do it.
Good, thank you very much.
Have you got any messages for other people who are struggling through the Munros?
No, just keep on struggling.
The cruel irony is that, unlike Douglas, Munro himself never did finish climbing his Munros. He continued to toil over the 538 main summits and satellite peaks on his list. But by the outbreak of the First World War, rheumatism had taken over his body.
As the prospect of completing his final summits became increasingly remote, Munro joked stoically to his friends that they would have to haul me up on a rope, otherwise the ascents would not be made. His joke turned out to be prescient. Munro died with only 3 peaks left to climb.
But he left us a unique gift. It still seems unbelievable to me that barely more than a century ago, only a handful of people knew about these mountains. And it's largely because of Munro so many now do.
Sir Hugh Munro brought a sense of order to the extraordinary chaos of these mountains. He loved them. I'm not a Munro bagger myself, although I have just totted up that I've climbed about 75, but I do understand the passion that draws people to try and complete the list. Munro, Robertson, the thousands of people who have followed in their boot prints, people like myself, ultimately we're all drawn here by the same thing, the desire to explore these magical mountains.
On the way, a fascinating project, chimpanzees and a video camera. You're about to view Chimp Cam on tonight's Natural World, next on BBC Two.